Come, gather close. Let the first rays of sunlight warm your face as the world awakens around us. The whisper of wind through these ancient stones. Her gnarled fingers trace intricate spirals carved into a wooden staff. Behind her, mist swirls around the base of the stone circle, lending an air of otherworldly mystery. It carries echoes of 1,000 forgotten voices of druids and warriors, bards and kings, all who once walked this sacred ground. And on the hilltops, great fires were lit to mark the turning of seasons so profound, their light could be seen for leagues. But for every high priest in gleaming talks, there were 100 humble folk, their stories whispered only in the rustling leaves. The flames flicker to life, and we stand at the threshold of time itself. Each hill, each stream, each weathered stone has a tale to tell for those who know how to listen. The very earth beneath our feet remembers the footsteps of those who came before, their joys, their sorrows, their hopes for the future. Today, we journey back to a time when magic and mystery ruled the land, before the coming of iron and empire changed everything. High in the misty mountains, shepherds tended their flocks, their lonely pipes carrying melodies older than memory, where the whispers of ancestors could be heard on the wind, and the future glimpsed in the dance of flames. These were the spaces where ordinary folk became something more touched by the divine. If only for a moment, the buried treasures of gold and amber, offerings to gods whose names are long forgotten. A sense of anticipation builds as more arrive, bearing baskets of food and bundles of firewood, each a testament to the skill, the vision, and the enduring spirit of a people who refused to be forgotten by time. Disease and hunger were constant companions, and the threat of violence from rival clans or strange invaders was never far away. Yet even in the darkest times, these people found strength in community, in shared stories, in the rituals that bound them to the land and to each other. But the whispers of the past linger. If we have the courage to listen, the camera pulls back, revealing the circle as just one small part of a vast and ancient landscape. What stories will we choose to tell? What legacy will we leave for those who come after? Tales of heroes and monsters, of love that defied death, of journeys to the other world and back again. These were not mere entertainment, but the very fabric of their world, a way to make sense of life's joys and sorrows, to find meaning in the turning of the seasons and the inevitability of change. And in hidden groves, beneath ancient oaks, the wisest among them sought to unravel the mysteries of existence itself. Perhaps it is the importance of connection to the land, to each other, to the great cycles of nature. Perhaps it is the power of story and symbol to shape our understanding of the world. Or perhaps it is simply a reminder that we, too, are part of a great and unending tale. The voices raised in song beneath star-filled skies. The children who played in the shadow of giants. At the center, a rough-hewn altar bears offerings of flowers, grain, and a single gleaming bronze knife. For history is not just the tales of chiefs and heroes, but of the forgotten thousands who lived, loved, and dreamed in the spaces between legend. This was no ordinary place. Here wise women communed with the spirits of earth and sky. Fierce chieftains forged alliances over cups of mead. The bards, whose songs could heal wounds or break hearts. The smiths, who coaxed wonders from fire and metal. Their arts were revered, feared, and never fully understood by those they lived among. We begin not with battles won or empires built, but with the real people of this ancient land, the calloused hands that raised these stones. Let's pause here for a moment. This land we tread upon holds secrets deeper than any tome. In the valleys, farmers coaxed life from stubborn soil, their songs of planting and harvest echoing through the centuries. But make no mistake, this was no idyllic paradise. Life was hard, often brutally so. Winters bit deep, and summers could be fickle. It was here, in places like this, that the veil between worlds grew thin. But what of those who truly walked between worlds? The Druids, with their secret knowledge and terrible power, and what of the great works they left behind? The circles of stone that still stand sentinel over silent hills, the intricate spirals carved into ageless rock. But perhaps their greatest legacy is not in stone or metal, but in the stories they passed down. As we stand here, surrounded by echoes of the past, what can we learn from these ancient ones? The mists are lifting now, and the day calls us back to the present. Rowers, Gallic prisoners, Greek captives, Iberian slaves, shoulder to shoulder on wooden benches, your world shrank to the width of a splintered oar, your existence defined by the relentless thud-thud-thud of the hortator's hammer. The Romans boasted of their triremes as wolves of the sea, but these were no proud predators. The heat was a living thing, a monster that clawed at your flesh and sucked the moisture from your very bones. The slaves, they offered silent prayers to Neptune, begging for a swift descent into the abyss. The very chains that had bound them to a life of torment would now drag them down to the crushing depths, where countless others had gone before. In the lightless deep, the bones of 1,000 forgotten rowers lay scattered across the seafloor, their final resting place among the swaying fronds of seaweed and the curious tentacles of octopus. In the scorching Mediterranean summer, men would collapse onto their oars, their skin blistering and peeling like sun-dried fish. Not silvered in array, but coarse salt-rubbed into their wounds as a crude antiseptic. The Roman navy was nothing if not pragmatic. Why waste precious coin on men destined for an early grave? Unlikely bonds were forged. A goal might a daily struggle against the twin enemies of exhaustion and despair. From the moment they were chained to their benches until their final breath, these men existed in a world defined by pain. Fear, the only markers of time were the changing of the guards and the gradual shift in the quality of light. Filtered through the oar ports, veterans would teach newcomers the tricks of survival, how to pace oneself, how to tend to blisters. Men would succumb to exhaustion, disease, or the cruel whims of their captors. The dead were unceremoniously unshackled and tossed overboard, their places quickly filled by new and as we drift off to sleep beneath the vast canopy of stars, we might spare a thought for those long-ago rowers and wonder what tales they might tell. If only we could hear them, The sea claimed them all in the end, whether in the heat of battle, the fury of a storm, or the quiet desperation of a deliberate capture, and saws to prevent infection, how to steal extra sips of water when the guards weren't looking. Some would hum quiet melodies from their homelands, a reminder of a world beyond wooden benches and iron chains. Meals, if they could be called such, consisted of watery gruel and hard biscuits, often riddled with weevils. Water was rationed strictly, barely enough to keep a man alive in the sweltering heat of the Mediterranean summer, and the constant threat of a watery grave. Yet even in this bleakest of existences, small their stories, largely lost to time, serve as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human resilience. For in the darkest holds of those ancient warships, amidst unimaginable hardship, there were still those who dared to hope, to dream, and to etch their names upon the stones that would outlast their mortal flesh. Attacks of defiance and moments of unexpected kindness served as testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. Share his painting the waves in hues of gold and crimson, but for those below decks, there was only the perpetual gloom, broken only by the dim glow of oil lamps that did little to dispel the shadows. The day began, as it always did, with the sharp crack of the Hortator's whip and the dull thud of his hammer against the sounding board muscles, stiff from a night spent huddled on hard benches, protested as hundreds of arms strained in unison to drive the massive oars through the water. Meagre rations of mouldy hardtack, with the very Thracian who had slain his kinsman in battle, a learned Greek, his hands now as calloused as any labourer's, would whisper fragments of Homer to men who had never heard of Troy. And when the Hortator stumbled upon these rare moments of human connection, he would laugh, a harsh sound devoid of mirth, before doubling their workload. For even the cruelest of overseers understood a fundamental truth: hope, that most fragile of emotions, could forge stronger chains than any iron shackle. Yet Thales persisted of slaves who endured for a decade or more in this hellish existence. Their secret lay in a brutal calculus. Row just hard enough to avoid the lash, but never so efficiently that you caught the eye of the Hortator. You might find it a crude etching on a piece of ballast stone, written in the script of a long-forgotten Iberian tribe. The rough translation: I lived, I rode, I am free. For to be promoted to the coveted position of Threnite, manning the uppermost oar, was a mixed blessing. True, you gained a modicum of status among your fellow slaves, but you also exposed yourself to the merciless Mediterranean sun, which baked flesh and addled minds with equal ferocity. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The stench was a constant companion, a nauseating mix of festering wounds, stale sweat, and the ever-present reek of the latrine bucket, a single, overflowing container meant to serve hundreds. But the most terrifying sound wasn't the crack of the whip or the groans of the dying. Nearby, a wealthy merchant haggles over the price of a group of 20 Thracian oarsmen, all bearing the scars of previous service. It was the sudden silence when the Hortator's hammer fell still. For a fleeting moment, their hunched silhouettes against the flickering torchlight resembled that of a father and son. For that silence heralded the approach of enemy ships, and battle meant only one thing for those chained below decks: a watery grave. They were floating prisons, propelled by the broken bodies and crushed spirits of the conquered. A young Lusitanian boy, no older than 15, blistered hands as the Hortator raises his malleus to strike the tempo. To be a galley slave was to exist in a limbo between life and death. No water for hours on end. No respite until the Triarch's horn echoed across the waves. When a trireme began to sink, the free men above decks fought desperately for survival. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. A skilled rower might last 2, perhaps 3 seasons before his body gave out. Their wages, cap-cut prompt. Nightfall in the rowers' barracks. A grizzled Sicilian veteran demonstrates to the Lusitanian boy how to surreptitiously sip water from the guard's amphora without being detected. In the suffocating darkness of the hold, history never recorded his name, but if you were to dive the wreck of the Aquila off the coast of Sicily, let's pause here for a moment. The life of a galley slave was one of unrelenting misery. Dawn would break over the Mediterranean, hours blended into days, days into weeks, in an endless cycle of torment. Yet even in this hell, there were those who found ways to resist, to maintain some shred of their humanity. But for every small victory, there were a dozen crushing defeats. As our fire burns low and the night deepens around us, we are left to contemplate the untold suffering of countless souls who lived and died chained to the oars of history's great fleets. The waves lap gently at the shore, carrying with them the whispered echoes of 1,000 forgotten voices. Admiral Lysander maintained 2 separate records, one for the Archons and another for his troubled soul. The latter meticulously catalogued every sailor who had perished under his command. 2,946 names spanning 15 years of service. Yet even the battle-hardened Lysander dared only to confide the horrifying truth to his most trusted helmsman. Lysander's ship slipped silently into the inky darkness of the Aegean. The freed rowers, men who had known nothing but servitude, his journey from Ruthless. It is a sound that would have been all too familiar to Lysander and his men, a constant companion on their voyages across the wind-dark sea. What became of the Admiral and his liberated crew? May we be inspired by his courage to confront the demons of his past, and may we find within ourselves the strength to stand up for what is right, even when it means challenging the very foundations of the world we know. Did they find safe harbor in some distant land? Or were they destined to roam the seas as free men until the end of their days? Perhaps some questions are best left to the realm of imagination, allowing us to craft our own endings to this tale of redemption. Now, it serves as a fitting accompaniment to our moment of reflection, linking us to those long-ago mariners and their struggles. Let us take one final moment to honor the memory of those 2,946 names inscribed in the Admiral's secret ledger. Though lost to the mists of time, their sacrifice has not been forgotten. In remembering them, we keep alive the flame of compassion that burned within Lysander's breast, a flame that has the power to illuminate even the darkest corners of human history. Commander with a taste of salt on our lips and the whisper of distant oars in our ears, we bid farewell to this chapter of our tale. The story of Admiral Lysander may have reached its conclusion, but the lessons it imparts will continue to resonate through the ages, inspiring future generations to stand up for what is right, to challenge injustice, and to never underestimate the transformative power of a conscience awakened. They have seen empires rise and fall, heroes emerge and fade, and the slow, inexorable march of progress across the centuries. May we carry with us the courage to confront our own shortcomings, promising new adventures and untold stories waiting to be discovered, with hearts full of hope and minds open to the possibilities that lie ahead. We set sail on the vast ocean of history, ready to uncover more tales of courage, transformation, and the indomitable human spirit, the wisdom to learn from our mistakes, and the compassion to see the humanity in all those we encounter. For in doing so, we honor not only the memory of Admiral Lysander, but also the timeless ideals of justice, freedom, and redemption that his story so powerfully embodies. In their presence, we are reminded of our own fleeting existence and the importance of leaving a legacy of compassion and justice, too. Yet as we do so, let us carry forward the spark of hope that his story ignites within us. In a world often darkened by cruelty and indifference, it serves as a beacon, a reminder that change is possible, that the human spirit is capable of great acts of courage and kindness. Compassionate liberator speaks, the fire has burned down to glowing coals, and the air is filled with the promise of a new day. We gather our belongings, ready to continue our own journeys, each of us carrying a piece of Lysander's story within our hearts, to the transformative power of conscience, a force that can overcome even the most deeply ingrained societal norms. Now tasted the sweetness of liberty upon the salt-tinged air, let us reflect on the weight of choices made in times of war and peace. The names etched in Lysander's secret ledger were more than mere casualties. We turn our thoughts to the legacy of Admiral Lysander. His final act of defiance against a system he had long served stands as a testament to the enduring power of change. It reminds us that it is never too late to challenge the status quo, to right the wrongs of the past, and to forge a new path toward justice and compassion. They were sons, brothers, and fathers each, with dreams unfulfilled and stories left untold. In honoring their memory, the Admiral found a path to redemption, however small it may have seemed in the grand tapestry of history. Their calloused hands gripped oars, not as instruments of bondage, but as tools of their newfound freedom. A towering Thracian known as Zopyrus, the scarred. Not all Athenians turned a blind eye to the atrocities. The fire dances before us, and we find respite beneath the vast canopy of stars. A burden that grew with each passing year in the flickering candlelight, his quill scratched across parchment, sending sparks spiraling upward to join the stars. In this moment of quiet contemplation, we are reminded of the countless untold stories that lie buried beneath the surface of our shared past. How many other Lysanders might there have been throughout the ages? Men and women who, in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform, chose instead to listen to the whispers of their conscience. Adding yet another name to the somber list, he paused, allowing a drop of wax to fall, sealing the fate of another lost soul. The Admiral's weathered fingers traced the countless names, each one a testament to the cruel machinations of war and the insatiable appetite of the sea. The weight of command settled heavily upon Lysander's shoulders. That night, the young Lysander retched over the ship's side, his anguished tears indistinguishable from the relentless rain. They say corrupts the soul, but guilt guilt has the power to reshape a man entirely. In the twilight of his career, Lysander devoted himself to the design of a revolutionary trireme, one equipped with adjustable oarlocks and shaded rowing station. The Athenian council scoffed at his proposals, dismissing him as a weak-willed dreamer. Yet on the fateful day when Sparta laid siege to Athens, eyewitnesses swore they glimpsed an aged admiral leading a daring escape aboard a vessel that bore no chains, power, as the flames of conquest devoured the once mighty city. Let us pause here for a moment. The tale of Admiral Lysander serves as a poignant reminder that even in the darkest corners of history, glimmers of humanity can shine through. As we gaze into the mesmerizing flames, the fire crackles. As the night deepens and the fire burns low, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore provides a soothing backdrop to our tale. In the soft glow of the dying embers, we can almost picture the silhouette of Lysander's revolutionary ship as it vanished into the mists of history. As we prepare to continue our journey through the annals of history, let us carry with us the lessons gleaned from Admiral Lysander's story. The stars wheel overhead, silent witnesses to countless human dramas played out beneath their eternal gaze. With the coming of dawn, we must bid farewell to Admiral Lysander and his tale of transformation. As the first rays of sunlight begin to paint the eastern sky, we stir from our night of storytelling and reflection before we depart, and so, as we venture forth into the light of a new day, the horizon beckons. They said the sea was Carthage's greatest ally, but for the shipbuilders it was a silent executioner. Some whispered that the drowned were the lucky ones, their suffering ended quickly. Rain lashed their faces, mingling with sweat and tears as they struggled to maintain their grip on slippery timber. The aging Iberian's fall was just another moment in the endless parade of misery that defined life in the shipyards. Its vastness swallowed their stories, their dreams, their very existence. Yet even as it claimed lives, the ocean remained indifferent to the suffering it witnessed. It was neither ally nor enemy, simply a force of nature as implacable as the empire that drove these men to their deaths. Around him, other slaves have left their own marks, a Berber symbol for freedom, a Greek plea to Poseidon, a Numidian curse against their masters. A rope maker could weave a flaw into the rigging, ensuring it would fail at the worst moment. There were whispers of hope in a place where hope had long since drowned. Each mark left behind was a testament to the unbroken spirit that persisted even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. And the boy, he carved his sister's face into the wood, praying that one day she might see it wherever the ship sailed. Wherever his bones lay, there were seeds of destruction planted by those who had nothing left to lose. As the overseers celebrate, he slips a rotten plank into the hull, ensuring the vessel would never survive its first storm. The camera lingers on his face, not triumphant, but at peace. Some ships sank mysteriously. The boy felt a strange calm settle over his weary body. This would be his legacy, not a grand monument or a heroic tale, but a quiet act of defiance that would echo across the waves. The rotten plank slid into place with barely a sound, indistinguishable from the rest of the hull to all but the most discerning eye, their crews vanishing without a trace. Others returned to port. Today, archaeologists piece together the lives of Carthage's slaves from the wreckage left behind: rusted chain, a shattered oar, a single sandal preserved in the silt. But the most haunting discoveries are the silent ones. The marks left by hands that knew they would never see home again, their hulls inexplicably cracked. The diver's flashlight cuts through the gloom, illuminating a world frozen in a moment of ancient tragedy. The galley lies broken and battered, its once proud lines now softened by centuries of coral growth and shifting sands. The Carthaginians blamed the gods, but the shipbuilders knew the truth. The ocean was not their enemy, it was their accomplice. Each link in the chain represents a life stolen, a future denied. Where he had hoped for a bounty of fish to feed his family, he instead finds himself cradling the remnants of a long-lost world. Each piece of wood, darkened by age and sea, bears witness to lives lived in shadow. The diver runs his gloved hand along the cold metal, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon him. There, a scrap reveals a name perhaps, a lover, a child, a homeland left behind. And on another, barely visible beneath a layer of barnacles, is a curse aimed at the masters who ruled with iron and fear. Every ship that left the harbor carried with it the silent prayers and fierce determination of those who built it a fleet, haunted by the ghosts of its creators. He feels the weight of generations in these waterlogged remnants, but for now, he is content to be a keeper of secrets, a guardian of memories that the sea has chosen to share. And as he walks, he whispers a prayer for those long-lost souls, hoping that somehow, somewhere, they have found the peace that was denied them in life. His own ancestors might have stood on these very shores, their eyes scanning the horizon for ships that carried their stolen kin to distant lands, and there, etched into the wood with painstaking care, is the face of a child. He knows that these fragments belong not to him, nor to the academics, who will soon descend upon his village. They belong to the sea, to the memory of those who suffered and endured. And if you stand on the shore at dusk, you might hear the faint echo of hammers, the ghostly rhythm of oars. The waves lap at his feet, their rhythm unchanged since the days when Carthage ruled these shores. And in that moment, past and present blur. The fishermen can almost see them, the ghostly figures of the shipbuilders, their backs bent but their spirits unbroken. And the distant, unbroken spirit of those who built an empire they would never share. It's a glimpse into a world long past, a silent cry that has echoed through the centuries. The diver pauses, overcome by the weight of the moment. He knows that this discovery will rewrite history books, forcing scholars to confront the human cost of ancient glory. Not a noble's son or a merchant's daughter, but a slave one of the countless, nameless souls who built an empire on their broken backs. When he pulls it up, it's filled not with fish, but with fragments of ancient wood each, one bearing the faintest trace of a human touch. Others believed the sea refused to take them, spitting their bodies back onto the shore as a warning to the living, a symbol of Carthage's power and reach. They could not see the cracks in the foundation, the rot that ran deep through every timber and rope. The waves crashed against the docks, their rhythm a mocking counterpoint to the labored breathing of the slaves. Cheers erupted from the assembled crowd, but the boy remained silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew that somewhere out there, beyond the reach of whips and chains, the sea waited. It would embrace this ship as it had so many others, cradling it in its depths as a final act of mercy. As the old man's body vanished beneath the churning foam, not a single worker dared pause. The Berber symbol, crude but unmistakable, spoke of a longing for freedom that transcended language and culture. But the ocean's memory was long. It would remember the touch of enslaved hands, the weight of unjust burdens, the whispered prayers of the forgotten. And one day, when the empire's pride sailed too far, pushed too hard, the sea would rise up to meet it not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. The Greek sailoress' plea to Poseidon was a desperate bargain with a god who seemed to have abandoned them. The fire crackles softly. As he reaches out, a school of fish scatters, revealing a child's carving on the sunken wood, and we rest beneath the stars. And the Numidian cursed its words, sharp and bitter, carried the weight of generations of suffering. He knew the price of discovery would be steep, but the urge to leave some trace of himself, of his family, was too strong to ignore. As he etched the familiar lines of his sister's smile, he imagined her voice carried on the salt-laden breeze, a reminder of a life that seemed impossibly distant. Now, they knew the price of hesitation. The overseer's whips cracked, urging them on with renewed fury. The storm was no excuse for slowed production, if anything. It was a challenge to prove their worth, or join their fallen comrade in the depths. The sea, once a symbol of adventure and possibility, had become a graveyard for countless unnamed souls. In the fading light of day, as thunder rolled overhead, the shipyard became a hellscape of shadows and suffering. Torches sputtered in the wind, casting eerie glows across faces etched with exhaustion and despair. The ceaseless pounding of hammers echoed the relentless beating of the waves against the shore, a cacophony of man and nature locked in an eternal struggle. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Even in hell, defiance flickered. A shipwright might accidentally weaken a mast so it would snap in battle. These small acts of rebellion were as much a part of the shipyard as the sweat and blood that stained its timbers. The Sicilian boy worked with feverish intensity, his young face a mask of concentration. Around him, the secret language of the oppressed bloomed in the shadows. These hidden messages formed a tapestry of resistance, woven into the very fabric of Carthage's naval might. The sea always claimed its due. As the massive warship loomed before him, the overseer's raucous laughter grated against his ears as they toasted their latest triumph. They saw only the gleaming vessel before them, as the ship slid into the water with a great splash. The Carthaginians might rule the waves for now. Let's pause here for a moment. The sea remembers what history forgets. Beneath the azure waters of the Mediterranean, time stands still. But amidst the decay, echoes of humanity persist. The manacles, still firmly attached to rotting benches, tell a story of unimaginable suffering. It's then that the fish scatter, their silver scales flashing in the beam of his light. The carving is crude but unmistakably human, eyes wide with hope or fear, a mouth set in determination. The Carthaginians are gone. Their empire is dust, but the sea still whispers their stories to those who listen. The fisherman's weathered hands tremble as he examines his unexpected catch. Here, a fragment shows the faintest outline of a ship, carved by a hand that dreamed of escape. The fisherman doesn't need to be a scholar to understand the significance of what he holds. As the sun dips below the water, painting the sky in shades of fire, the fisherman carefully gathers his find. He walks along the beach, the ancient wood cradled in his arms like precious cargo. As darkness falls, he makes his way home, knowing that tomorrow will bring change. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. another barker carved his own path through the merciless Alps. Hasdrubal had studied his brother's folly. He recruited mountain-born scout. The Barcus marched to the beat of a far more primal drum. Vengeance. Their father had bound them with an oath, sworn in blood, to harbor eternal hatred for Rome. Below him, the remnants of his once proud army emerged from their snow-covered shelters, faces gaunt but eyes still burning with purpose. Where once marched 30,000 strong, now barely 15,000 souls clung to life and hope. These men had faced death in 1,000 frozen forms, and emerged tempered like the finest steel. The snow gradually gives way to green valleys, and the soldiers' faces light up with renewed hope. Every step brought them closer to Hannibal, to vengeance, to glory. Hasdrubal's tactical genius shone as he navigated the treacherous mountain paths, outmaneuvering Roman patrols and forging alliances with local Gallic tribes. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows across his face, highlighting the worry lines etched deep around his eyes. They were no longer merely soldiers, they were the living embodiment of Carthage's fury, forged in the crucible of the Alps. How fared Hannibal? Had Rome finally broken the unbreakable general? The lack of news was deafening, and each passing day without word from his brother felt like a knife twisting in Hasdrubal's gut. They moved like a great serpent through the Italian landscape, leaving destruction in their wake. And now two armies converged on Hasdrubal's position, one led by the Consul Livy, the other by the Praetor Nero. The noose was tightening, and Hasdrubal knew that the coming days would determine not just his fate, but that of Carthage itself. Roman farms burned, their inhabitants fleeing before the Carthaginian advance with tales of demons from the mountains. His generals gather around him, awaiting orders. The tension is palpable, the air thick with the promise of impending battle. Before us lies the might of Rome, and beyond them, our salvation. Hannibal awaits, and with him, the future of our people. Hasdrubal rides along the front lines, his presence igniting cheers from the men. In the distance, the Roman legions advance, their eagles held high. Hasdrubal's broken body lies amidst the carnage, his face serene in death. A Roman soldier bends to retrieve the Carthaginian general's signet ring. We have crossed mountains and defied death itself to reach this moment. His final thoughts were of Hannibal, of the brother he had crossed mountains to save but would never see again. As darkness claimed him, Hasdrubal allowed himself a small smile. He had given everything for his family, for his city, for a dream of revenge against Rome. And though that dream now lay shattered, he knew that his name would echo through history alongside that of his legendary brother. Now we must prove ourselves worthy of the sacrifices made to bring us here. The forgotten brother who dared to challenge the Alps and fate itself. His march may have ended in defeat, but the courage and determination he displayed live on, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dare to reach for greatness, no matter the cost. The mountains had exacted their toll, but the fire of vengeance still burned hot in Carthaginian hearts. With grim resolve, Hasdrubal raised his sword, the rising sun glinting off its polished blade. He recalled the day of his departure from Iberia, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a leaden cloak. Hasdrubal fought with the fury of a man possessed, his tactical brilliance shining even in the chaos of battle. For a moment, it seemed as though victory was within grasp. The left flank of the Roman army began to crumble under the Carthaginian onslaught. The stars offered no answer, their cold light as distant and unfeeling as the gods themselves, and pillars of smoke rise from Roman outposts in the distance. Hasdrubal rides at the head of the column, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Even as Hasdrubal rallied his men for the final push, word reached him that Nero's forces had outflanked them, striking at the Carthaginian rear. The tide of battle turned in an instant, and Hasdrubal watched in horror as his dream of reuniting with Hannibal crumbled to dust. His wife's tear-stained face, his children's confused gazes, all sacrificed on the altar of duty and familial honor. "Brothers," he cried, his voice carrying across the windswept peaks, "Rome lies before us, and with it our destiny." And so Hasdrubal pushed onward, even as his mighty elephants began to falter their massive hearts, giving out one by one, their frozen carcasses becoming macabre waypoints in the endless white. Outfitted his men in furs thick enough to shame a bear, and devised ingenious sleds to bear the weight of his war elephant. The campfire flickers low, and the stars wheel coldly overhead, indifferent to the struggles of men. But the Alps are not so easily out. Entire platoons vanished beneath thundering walls of white death. The very ground betrayed them, shattering like glass beneath their feet and swallowing men whole. And those vaunted guides, they melted away in the night like phantoms, taking with them what precious little food remained. As the third week dawned, Hasdrubal's army gnawed on boiled leather and muttered dark prayers to forgotten gods. The brother who dared to dream his quest to lead 30,000 battle-hardened warriors across the very peaks that had nearly broken his brother's will. But the mountains are cruel guardians of their secrets, and they do not yield easily to mortal ambition. While Rome cowered in the shadow of Hannibal's legend, the journey began with hope masquerading as certainty. Hannibal, scarred and one-eyed, reaches out a frost-blackened hand and whispers, "Brother, you've come too far." Hasdrubal jerks awake gasping, to find his tent nearly crushed beneath the weight of fresh snow. What drives a man to such lengths? Not the glitter of gold, nor the siren song of glory, a moment of stillness. The wind's mournful, keen echoes through the peaks, carrying with it the ghostly trumpeting of fallen elephants. Let us pause here, dear listeners. As the new day dawned, Hasdrubal surveyed what remained of his force. The response was a ragged cheer, more a defiant howl than a battle cry. The descent into Italy was no less perilous than the ascent, but now a new energy infused the Carthaginian ranks. Yet even as hope blossomed, a shadow of doubt gnawed at Hasdrubal's mind. As the army rested on the eve of their push into central Italy, Hasdrubal found himself haunted by memories. Was it worth it? He whispered to the night, his words carried away by the gentle breeze. With the dawn came renewed purpose. Hasdrubal drove his men hard, knowing that every moment of delay gave Rome time to marshal its defenses. But Rome was not caught unawares. The Senate had learned harsh lessons from Hannibal's invasion. "Brothers," Hasdrubal addressed his commanders, his voice low but filled with iron resolve. "We stand on the precipice of history." A murmur of assent rippled through the gathered officers. They had followed Hasdrubal through hell, and they would follow him into the jaws of death itself, if he but asked. As the two armies clashed on the banks of the Meteorus River, the fate of two great civilizations hung in the balance. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. In the end, Hasdrubal chose to die, as he had lived fighting for the glory of Carthage. Four were captured, one got lost. The sixth, his head was catapulted into Hannibal's camp by Nero himself. The camera follows its tusks as they impale two legionaries before a pilum finds its eye. And when he saw the standards of two Roman consuls, the Carthaginian did something no Barca had ever done. He surrendered to despair. The proud Carthaginian general, scion of the mighty Barca family, watching as his carefully laid plans crumbled like sand castles before the relentless tide of Roman might. The Gauls, once fierce allies, now scattered like leaves in an autumn wind and thrown before Hannibal's outposts. They say the great general wept only once in his life. That day, the parchment crumples as the historian's candle gutters out. The Iberians, loyal to the last, fought with the fury of cornered wolves. But even their valor could not stem the tide of Roman steel and tactics. They were right. Without reinforcements, Hannibal's campaign became a slow retreat into oblivion. And Carthage, she would burn within decades. The defeat of Hasdrubal was not just a military triumph. It was a turning point in the very soul of the Republic. The taste of total victory, the intoxicating feeling of invincibility, these would shape Roman policy, an ambition for centuries to come, leading them down paths of conquest that would ultimately strain the very fabric of their society. The message was clear. Your brother is alone now. Senators gave grand speeches. Poets composed epic verses, and children played at being Nero, vanquishing imaginary Carthaginians in the dusty streets. But walk the high passes of the Alps in winter, and you might hear it the crunch of elephant feet in snow, the muttered prayers to Baal Hammon, the click-click of a general's frozen fingers counting his remaining men. The mountains do not forget, and neither should we. It's the small, human moments, a soldier's prayer whispered to a foreign god. The quiet determination in a general's eyes as he counts his dwindling forces, the shared warmth of a campfire in hostile territory. These are the threads that weave the tapestry of history, often overlooked but no less vital. The head of Hasdrubal, once a symbol of Carthaginian might, now a grotesque trophy, served as a stark reminder of Rome's supremacy. The Alps, those towering sentinels of rock and ice, still hold the secrets of Hannibal's audacious crossing. In the quiet of a winter's night, when the wind howls through the passes, one might imagine the ghostly trumpeting of war. Elephants, the stones, weathered by time and conflict, whisper tales of merchant princes, of skilled navigators, of a culture that dared to challenge the might of Rome. And somewhere in that whisper, the names of Hannibal and Hasdrubal still resonate. The clatter of hooves on icy slopes and the determined march of an army that dared to challenge Rome on its own turf. It's a reminder of the human cost of ambition, the fine line between glory and ruin, and the enduring power of legacy. We keep the memory of the Bacchus alive, not just through dry historical accounts, but through the power of imagination and empathy. We picture the weight of responsibility on Hannibal's shoulders, the anguish of Hasdrubal's final moments, the hopes and fears of every soldier who followed them. The Bacchus may have lost their empire, but they gained immortality in the annals of history. The story of the Bacchus of Carthage and Rome, of ambition and fate, it's all there in the dancing flames, in the twinkling stars above, in the very air we breathe. For in remembering, in telling these tales, we keep the past alive and ensure that the lessons of history are never truly forgotten. The Carnyx's mournful cry carries with it the laments of fallen warriors, the shattered dreams of empires, and the weight of decisions that shaped the ancient world. We remind ourselves that history is not just a collection of dates and facts, but a tapestry of human experiences, triumphs and tragedies, hopes and disappointments, moments of brilliance and fatal miscalculations. The story of the Bacchus is our story, a reflection of the eternal human struggle against fate and circumstance. But his journey was no less epic, his sacrifices no less profound. We remember the Bacchus, not just as generals or as symbols of a lost cause, but as men who dared greatly, who challenged the limits of what was thought possible, and who, in their own way, reshaped the world. The Psalter-fitting tribute to Carthage, the great maritime power, transforms our humble campfire into a portal to the past. In those ethereal flames, we might see the ghostly shapes of Hannibal's elephants, trudging through snow-capped mountains, or perhaps we glimpse Hasdrubal's final charge, a moment of desperate courage frozen in time. The wind carries the faintest echo of war horns, or is it just the sigh of the sea? The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. He led an army across treacherous terrain, faced down Roman legions, and came tantalizingly close to changing the course of the war. That he failed in the end does not diminish the magnitude of his attempt. It's a moment to reflect on the fickleness of fate and the heavy burden of leadership. The secret forced march, the joining of forces, it was a masterstroke that would be studied for generations to come. But perhaps, in the end, they won something greater than battles. As the North African wind whips up clouds of dust, one can almost imagine the ghosts of the past rising with it. The faint echo of war horns carried on the breezes, it merely the wind playing tricks, or the lingering spirit of a once great civilization? For even now, we speak their names. And as long as stories are told under stars like these, the Bacchus will never truly die. In that moment, as the reality of his situation crashed upon him like a tidal wave, the fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Hasdrubal felt something he had never experienced before, the cold grip of utter hopelessness. When Hasdrubal finally descended into Italy, he did something unthinkable. He sent 6 riders to find Hannibal. He knew the weight of history on his shoulders, the expectations of Carthage, and the hopes of his brother. Forgive us. The camera lingers on the ancient Punic script as a spider spins its web across the words. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the mist cleared and the two armies faced each other across the air was thick with tension and the scent of impending doom. The desperation in Hasdrubal's actions spoke volumes. The battle was over before it began. Hasdrubal's Gauls fled at first contact. His Iberians fought like demons, but were outflanked. It was a sight to behold, yet one that would haunt the annals of history. And there stood Hasdrubal, his eyes widening in disbelief as he saw not one but two sets of Roman standards. Nero's gambit had paid off spectacularly. Rome celebrated for weeks. They paraded Hasdrubal's head on a spike, wrote plays, mocking Carthage, and declared the war all but won. The streets of Rome echoed with jubilant cheers and the clinking of wine cups. But even as Rome revelled in its victory, the seeds of its own hubris were being sown. Let's pause here for a moment. In the stillness of the night, as the echoes of celebration fade, one can almost hear the whispers of history. History remembers Hannibal. It forgets Hasdrubal. The legacy of the Bacchus is etched, not just in the pages of history books, but in the very landscape they traversed. But it's not just the grand gestures that linger. And what of Hasdrubal? His name may not shine as brightly as his brothers in the annals of history. Two brothers, one destiny, and an empire that slipped through their fingers like alpine snow. The ruins of Carthage stand as a silent testament to the rise and fall of empires. In those ruins lie the dreams of the Barcas, the ambitions of Carthage, and the bitter lessons of history. Their story is more than just a tale of military campaigns and lost battles. As we sit here, beneath the same stars that once guided Carthaginian ships and lit the camps of marching armies, we become part of that unbroken chain of storytellers. In doing so, we breathe life into the past. And so, as the fire dies down and the night deepens, we carry with us the echoes of a long-gone era. Let's pause here for a moment. In this quiet moment, as the blue flames flicker and dance, we're transported across time and space. As we sit in contemplation, let the weight of history settle around us like a comfortable cloak. We'll never know. The Carthaginian records, meticulously kept on precious papyrus, were later claimed by Roman flames. His hand rests on the hilt of a sword, a gift from Hannibal. The blade gleams with an inscription. For Carthage and family, the waves lap at his feet, slowly erasing his footprints in the sand. Fitting, for empires rise and fall on the winds of fire and ink. Neither realizes the other's presence. Their satchels bear urgent news. Hasdrubal's army has crossed the Alps. Now, he became something more a last hope. Without reinforcements from across the sea, his brother's Italian campaign teetered on the brink. Their fingers trace potential routes, knocking over markers representing legions. In the background, a young scribe Polybius watches intently, his stylus poised over a blank wax tablet. He gathered an army, a mirror of Hannibal's own, and set his sights on the treacherous Alpine, risking the unification of the brothers' armies. The solution proposed was audacious and quintessentially Roman. Consul Claudius Nero would lead a flying column north. Their eyes widen as they realize the implications. Roman numbers have doubled overnight. In the distance, the faint glow of campfires betrays the presence of a massive army. The Roman force that materialized was far larger than he had anticipated. His Gallic allies melted away in the night, sensing the shift in fortune. In the center, Hasdrubal fights like a man possessed, his sword a blur of motion, but for every enemy he cuts down, two more take their place. As dawn broke, the Carthaginian general faced a terrible realization. He stood alone against the full might of Rome, joining his colleague Livius to crush. Speed and secrecy were paramount. The fate of the Republic hung in the balance. His remaining eye reflects the flames of a tiny pyre where he burns Hasdrubal's favorite cloak. The smoke curls into the shape of Carthage's sigil before dissipating. A desperate struggle that would shape the course of history. Now he became something worse, a ghost. Without Hasdrubal's troops, his campaign withered. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the foreground, a young archaeologist unearths a corroded metal object, a Carthaginian coin, bearing the image of Hannibal. His failure at the Meteris did unjust seal Hannibal's fate, set in motion the events that would lead to Carthage's ultimate destruction. A child presses her hand against the glass, her palm perfectly matching the bloodstain described in the ancient accounts. Yet even in defeat, the Barca legacy endures. Their audacity, their strategic brilliance, their unwavering devotion to a doomed cause have become the stuff of legend. He wandered Italy like a shadow, winning skirmishes but losing the war. And when Carthage finally recalled him, the Senate sent only one ship, as if they already knew their son was cursed. On the whiteboard, a timeline stretches from Hannibal's crossing of the Alps to the fall of Carthage. Hasdrubal's march is marked with a bold red X. The Carthaginian general looks to the south, towards his brother, then spurs his horse into the enemy ranks. His final charge is a blur of steel and blood. His daring crossing of the Alps, his near miss at changing the course of history, these are the stuff of epic poetry. In many ways, his story is a microcosm of Carthage itself. Brilliant, ambitious, and ultimately tragic. Listening to the crackle of the fire and the whispers of the past, the story of Hasdrubal and Hannibal, of Carthage and Rome, may be ancient history, but its lessons, its triumphs, and its tragedies are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. For in their story, we see reflections of our own ambitions, our own struggles, and our own humanity. The answers lie buried with the bones of long-dead soldiers in the dust of fallen cities, and in the whispers of history that still echo across the centuries. For, in the end, Hasdrubal's unfinished war reminds us that even the mightiest empires are built on the hopes and sacrifices of individuals, each with their own story, each leaving their mark on the tapestry of time. Perhaps it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of overreach, or a testament to the power of determination in the face of overwhelming odds. It bears an inscription in both Punic and Latin. Here lies the dream of empire, born in purple seas and laid to rest beneath Italian skies. The dream of bringing Rome to its knees had died on the banks of the Meteris, along with his brother. Yet even as his hopes crumbled, Hannibal's legend only grew. In defeat, he achieved a kind of immortality that victory might never have granted. Or maybe, in the end, it's simply a reminder of our shared human hysteria story of ambition, brotherhood, and the cruel twists of fate that shape empires. Hasdrubal's tactical brilliance shone even in defeat. His center held firm against repeated Roman assaults. Hannibal stands alone, his face etched with grief and determination. He picks up a single marker representing himself, and places it defiantly in the heart of Italy. But as the day wore on, the weight of numbers began to tell. The Carthaginian flanks crumbled, and with them, any hope of victory. Hasdrubal had done the impossible. He had followed his brother's footsteps through the mountains. The Gauls flocked to his banner, sensing Rome's vulnerability. Farmers abandoned their fields, fleeing to walled cities, and in the Senate, the unthinkable was uttered. What if Hannibal and Hasdrubal joined forces? And when Rome learned of his march, the Senate trembled, as if they already knew their doom approached on elephantine feet. What was the final stratagem? Hannibal, a daring raid on Rome itself, a desperate plea to Carthage's old allies, or perhaps a simple path of retreat. For a decade, Hasdrubal had been Carthage's anchor in Iberia. In the spring of 207 BCE, whispers raced across Italy faster than any legion. Rome faced a terrible choice. Confront Hasdrubal in the north, leaving central Italy exposed to Hannibal, or maintain their containment of the Elder But. On the banks of the Meterest River, Hasdrubal's dream of reunion shattered. The Battle of the Meterest raged for hours. In those final moments, did Hasdrubal think of Carthage, of his brother, or of the legacy he would leave behind? We can only speculate. But as the sun set on the Meterus, it also set on Carthage's hopes in Italy. Hasdrubal's head would soon adorn a Roman spear, a grim message delivered to Hannibal's camp, returned to the moonlit Roman camp after the battle. The scribe Dion carefully transcribes Hasdrubal's last letter, mixing the general's blood with ink. The parchment reads, "Brother, the Alps have stolen our victory, but Rome will never steal." Oh, the final word is smeared beyond recognition. What was the last word Hasdrubal wrote? Name, honor, or perhaps simply hatred? We'll never know. The Roman scribe who copied a Greek slave named Dion later claimed the stain looked like a child's handprint. Fitting, for Carthage's fate was always written in blood. Years, Hannibal had been Rome's nightmare. In 2019, forensic archaeologists made a chilling discovery. Hasdrubal's bones showed signs of ritual mutilation. His right femur carved with Punic symbols after death. Was it a Roman trophy? A Carthaginian burial rite? Or something darker? The answer lies with the bones. And bones keep their secrets well. Let's pause here for a moment. The echoes of Hasdrubal's final march still resonate today. What lessons can we draw from Hasdrubal's unfinished war? In the years that followed, Hannibal would fight on, a lion backed into a corner. but with each passing season, his roar grew fainter. Today, we remember Hasdrubal not just as Hannibal's brother, but as a pivotal figure in his own right. As the sun sets on our tail, we're left to ponder the myth of ends. What if Hasdrubal had reached his brother? What if Carthage had triumphed? And so we end where we began, beneath a canopy of stars. For decades, we've grappled with their disappearance, painting them as brutish cavemen, outcompatted by our own ancestors. But recent genetic discoveries are rewriting this narrative, revealing a far more complex and intimate relationship between our two species. No debate in human evolution stirs more controversy than the fate of the Neanderthals. Recent studies have shattered the myth of Neanderthal inferiority. Far from being simple brutes, they possessed sophisticated tool-making skills, created art, and even cared for their sick and elderly. But here's the truly revolutionary finding. Many of us carry Neanderthal DNA within our own genomes. This isn't just a quirk of history, it's a testament to repeated interbreeding between our species over thousands of years. The implications of this genetic legacy are staggering. Neanderthal genes influence everything, from our immune systems to our skin and hair color. Some of these inherited traits may have even helped early Homo sapiens adapt to life outside of Africa. But the story doesn't end there. As we delve deeper into the Neanderthal genome, we're uncovering evidence of a shared capacity for language, abstract thought, and perhaps even spirituality. If Neanderthals were so similar to us, why did they vanish? Climate change, competition for resources, and simple bad luck all likely played a role. Yet we can't ignore the possibility that our own ancestors may have contributed to their decline. The story of human evolution is not just one of triumph, but also of loss and perhaps regret. The Neanderthals weren't just a failed experiment in human evolution. They were our partner, our rivals, and ultimately, a crucial part of our own genetic makeup. On the other, a modern human child engages with a tablet computer. Despite the technological divide, their expressions of curiosity and wonder are strikingly similar. Like us, they faced climate change, shifting ecosystems, and competition for resources. Their eventual extinction is a sobering reminder that no species, no matter how advanced, is guaranteed survival. The story of the Neanderthals is not just about a lost species, it's about the intricate web of relationships, adaptations, and chance events that shaped our own existence. It's a reminder that our history is far richer and more nuanced than we ever imagined. As we face our own global challenges, the fate of the Neanderthals offers both warning and inspiration. We're forced to confront our own biases and preconceptions. From extracting DNA from fossils, tens of thousands of years old, to reconstructing entire genomes from fragmentary evidence. As we celebrate these advancements, we must also remain mindful of their limitations. The fossil record is incomplete, and even the most sophisticated genetic analysis can't tell us everything about how our ancestors lived, thought, and interacted. There will always be gaps in our knowledge. It's a tale of adaptation, resilience, and the unexpected twists and turns of each. By embracing this shared heritage, we open ourselves up to a richer, more nuanced understanding of what it means to be human. Spaces where imagination and interpretation must fill in the blanks. The weight of millennia settles around us, and we contemplate our place in the grand tapestry of human evolution. We're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in evolutionary biology. Each new breakthrough opens up new avenues for research, promising even more startling revelations in the years to come. The most profound impact of this research is how it's changing our relationship with our evolutionary past. The Neanderthals are no longer distant, alien figures, but close relatives whose legacy lives on in our own bodies. This realization fosters a sense of connection, not just to our immediate ancestors, but to the entire sweep of human evolution. The idea that there was ever a pure human lineage is being dismantled by the evidence. Instead, as the layers peel away, glimpses of fossilized bones and ancient tools appear, symbolizing the gradual uncovering of our evolutionary past. We're discovering a history of interbreeding, adaptation, and cultural exchange that spans continents and millennia. This realization has profound implications for how we think about race, ethnicity, and human diversity. The child's parent watches with a mix of awe and recognition. Their legacy lives on in each of us, a reminder of the complex and often surprising paths that led to our modern species. For centuries, we've placed ourselves at the pinnacle of creation, separate from and superior to the rest of nature. The discovery that we share genes with a supposedly primitive species forces us to reconsider this narrative. We are not the inevitable result of evolution, but one branch on a complex and ever-changing tree of life. We're left with a sense of both wonder and responsibility. Wonder at the intricate dance of genes and environments that shaped our species, and responsibility to preserve and protect the fragile traces of our evolutionary heritage. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of this genetic detective work is how it's reshaping our understanding of what it means to be human. The line between us and them blurs with each new discovery. We're not just distant cousins, we're the product of a complex tapestry of interspecies relationships that span millennia. Their silhouettes blend together, symbolizing the shared genetic heritage that unites them across time. We're rewriting not just their history, but our own. The boundaries between species, once thought to be clear and immutable, are proving to be far more fluid than we ever imagined. We carry within us the genetic echoes of multiple human lineages, each contributing to the complex tapestry of our modern genome. And as we do, we're forced to confront the fact that human evolution is not a simple, linear progression. It's a tangled web of interactions, adaptations, and unexpected twists. But this revelation also forces us to confront some uncomfortable questions. The Neanderthal genes we carry may influence our susceptibility to certain diseases, our cognitive abilities, and even our behaviors. The ability to extract and analyze ancient DNA raises questions about privacy, consent, and the treatment of human remains. How do we balance our thirst for knowledge with respect for the dead? And as we uncover more about our shared heritage with other human species, how might this reshape our views on race, identity, and what it truly means to be human? By studying these ancient cousins, we gain invaluable insights into our own biology and the challenges we face as a species. As we piece together this ancient puzzle, we're left with a profound sense of connection to our past. The story of the Neanderthals is far from over. Each new fossil, each strand of ancient DNA adds another layer to our understanding. This journey of discovery isn't just about unraveling the past, it's about understanding ourselves in the present. Yet as we celebrate these scientific breakthroughs, we must also grapple with their ethical implications. The Neanderthal story also serves as a powerful reminder of our species' resilience and its vulnerability, but perhaps the most profound lesson we can draw from our Neanderthal cousins is one of humility. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of our past, we're left with a sense of wonder at the complexity of human evolution. This ongoing research isn't just changing how we view the past, it's reshaping our understanding of what it means to be human in the present. As we delve deeper into this shared heritage, the Neanderthal story also highlights the incredible power of modern scientific techniques. Perhaps as we continue to unravel the complexities of our shared past with the Neanderthals, the story of the Neanderthals is, in many ways, our own story. Let's pause here for a moment. As the ashes of Carthage cooled, a new breed of merchant princes rose from the embers of conquest. For every bale of silk that passed through their hands, 1,000 whispers followed. A hooded figure examines the documents, nodding in satisfaction as he reads reports of troop movements and senatorial debates, rumors of bribery, of secrets sold to rival houses, of fortunes built on the bones of fallen cities. And as Rome's shadow lengthened across the known world, these merchant princes found themselves caught in a web of their own making. The merchants guarded their own mysteries with the ferocity of Cerberus, knowing that their power lay in what they knew and what others did not. They built networks of spies and informants that rivaled those of emperors, their reach extending from the slave markets of Delos to the palaces of Parthian kings. It flows like water, as vital as the Nile's flood, and just as capable of drowning the unwed. And so they played their dangerous game, balancing on the knife's edge between wealth and ruin, influence and infamy. These were men who saw opportunity in chaos, who wove webs of influence as intricate as the silks they traded. As the figure leaves, the merchant opens a hidden panel in the wall, revealing shelves lined with identical pouches, each bearing the seal of a different noble house. Merchant houses that had stood for generations crumbled overnight, their masters vanishing into exile, or worse. But behind closed doors, in hidden chambers where even the walls had ears, they whispered a different truth. They brokered peace between warring tribes, arranged marriages that sealed alliances between distant kingdoms. All the while, the silk flowed, and with it, the lifeblood of empires. And warehouses, a group of mounted warriors ride through the streets. Their leader holds aloft a bolt of silk, laughing as he tears it to shreds. Trade routes that had stood for centuries were severed overnight. Cities that had been bastions of commerce were reduced to ash and rubble. They came from all corners of the crumbling empire. Grizzled veterans of 1,000 deals, their eyes still sharp despite the weight of years. And in the chaos, the secrets they had so carefully hoarded became worthless, or worse, deadly. One rises, holding up a small silk pouch. "To the future," he says, his voice cracking. "May it be as kind to our children as the past was to us. We are the true weavers of empire," they would boast, spinning the threads that bind the world together. They reminisced about the days when a whisper in the right ear could topple governments, when the fate of nations hung on the delicate threads of their trade. But beneath the nostalgia lay a current of fear, a recognition that their time was passing. Those who survived learned to tread even more carefully, their smiles growing sharper, their eyes more wary. Perhaps too interesting. Let us hope our descendants find calmer waters to navigate, not for wealth or power, but for safety, for a chance at a quieter life in the uncertain world that was to come. They left behind a world in turmoil, an empire in its death throes. The silk whispers tales of long-forgotten intrigues, and we sit in the shadow of empires long turned to dust. But they also left a legacy, one of cunning, of adaptability, of the power of trade to shape the course of history. Ships were chartered, gold changed hands, and promises were made, promises that would echo through the centuries. As the Republic gave way to empire, the rules of the game began to change. Behind him, the heavy tread of Praetorian boots echoes off the stone walls. The merchant turns a corner and vanishes into a hidden doorway, just as his pursuers appear. New powers rose, hungry for the wealth and influence that had long been the domain of the merchant princes. As Rome's power waned, new players entered the game. From the steppes of Central Asia came the Huns, their hunger for conquest matched only by their thirst for luxury, and in their wake a new breed of merchant arose, one that cared little for the delicate dance of diplomacy and intrigue. The world they had known, the game they had played for so long, was coming to an end. The Praetorian Guard, once mere bodyguards, now held the fate of emperors in their hands. And they, too, had developed a taste for secrets. From the bustling markets of Alexandria to the misty harbors of Britannia, they played a game as old as civilization itself, the pursuit of wealth and power through the delicate art of commerce. They weathered the storms of political upheaval, adapting to each new regime with the flexibility of the fabrics they traded. When Sulla marched on Rome, they were there, whispering in the ears of both loyalists and rebels. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, their agents were already in place, ready to profit from the chaos that followed. But in this world of shifting alliances and fragile peace, even the mightiest traders walked a razor's edge. They called it practical diplomacy. While legions marched and consuls debated, the silk merchants wove their own empire of information. Every caravan that crossed the deserts of Parthia, every ship that braved the monsoons of the Indian Ocean, carried more than just precious fabrics. A senator looking to outmaneuver a rival, a governor seeking to curry favor with Rome, even barbarian chieftains beyond the empire's borders, hungry for knowledge of the great power to the south. The merchant princes sold to all, their loyalty as fluid as the silk that flowed through their hands. Hidden among the folds of silk were whispers of revolt in Gaul, of unrest in Egypt, of ambitious generals eyeing the purple, and for the right price, these whispers found their way to eager ears. But such a game was not without its risks. For every secret sold, a dozen more were kept. Information, they would say with a knowing smile, is the true silk of our trade. For a time, it seemed as though their empire of silk and secrets would endure forever. But even the most skilled players can find themselves outmaneuvered. The dance grew more frantic, the stakes higher with each passing year. We deal in silk, they would say to those who questioned their loyalties, not in the affairs of state, and for a time, perhaps they were right. Their influence stretched from the markets of Antioch to the mist-shrouded shores of Britain. But the wheel of fortune is ever turning, and even the most cunning can find themselves crushed beneath its weight. The old guard watched in horror as their carefully constructed world began to unravel. Some adapter, of course, they always did. They forged new alliances, found new routes, discovered new markets hungry for the touch of silk. But something had changed. In the twilight of their era, the last of the great merchant princes gathered in a hidden villa on the shores of the Tyrrhenian Sea. They spoke of old glories, of deals struck and fortunes made. "We have lived in interesting times," one old merchant said, raising a cup of wine. As dawn broke over the sea, they made their final deals. And so, with the rising sun, the last of the great silk merchants set sail for distant shores. Let us rest here for a moment. An elderly priestess in a tattered blue robe kneels before a crumbling statue of Tanit as Roman legionaries storm through the city. She remains motionless, even as a soldier's sword scatters the sacred incense bowls at her feet. Amidst the chaos and destruction of Carthage's final hours, one woman stood defiant. The camera slowly pans up to reveal the reflection of burning buildings in her tear-filled yet determined eyes. "We have kept our stories. Let the gods remember." The last priestess of Tanit, her name lost to the sands of time, guarded the temple archives with unwavering resolve. Instead, they discovered stacks upon stacks of tablets, each one a window into a world they sought to erase. Year 814 BCE. Elissa of Tyre founds our great city. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. They revealed a Carthage that Rome never knew, where African philosophers debated in bustling markets, where Iberian artisans crafted wonders of silver. The Punic exercise reads, "Tanit protects Carthage. Carthage cherishes her children." A young Tunisian girl, watching intently, unconsciously traces the ancient letters with her finger. Rome may have razed Carthage to the ground, but the words of its children still teach us today. They outlawed the Punic language, yet its echoes live on in the dialects of North Africa. The Carthaginians, however, wrote of life itself, receipts for purple dye from Tyre, marriage contracts between noble families, the price of a dove offered to heal a sick child, and in those seemingly mundane scratches of stylus on clay, they achieved a form of immortality. It is a testament to the resilience of human memory and the power of the written word. For centuries, the great rival of Rome was reduced to little more than a cautionary tale, a civilization erased from the pages of history. They brought exotic goods from distant lands, spices from India, amber from the Baltic, and tin from as far away as Britain. It was a cosmopolitan city where cultures mingled and ideas flowed as freely as the wine in its taverns. The great harbour, with its circular military port and bustling commercial docks, was a marvel of engineering that left even Roman observers in it. But more than mere merchants, they were innovators and artists. Their craftsmen creating works of unparalleled beauty that graced the homes of nobles and commoners alike. But it was not the end of the story. The Punic people, though scattered and subjugated, did not simply vanish. Their culture and traditions lived on, influencing the Roman province of Africa and beyond. We are connected to those ancient Carthaginians in a way that transcends time and space. Their hopes, their fears, their daily struggles, and small triumphs all are preserved in the fragile clay that has survived the centuries. In studying these relics, we do more than simply learn about the past. We honor the memory of those who came before us, and we recognize the common humanity that binds us all across the vast expanse of history. Even today, traces of Carthage can be found in the languages, customs, and genetic makeup of modern North Africans. The tablets tell us of farmers tending their olive groves, of fishermen setting out at dawn to cast their nets, of children playing in the narrow streets while their parents haggled in the marketplace. It is a tapestry woven from countless individual threads, each one a life lived, a story told, a memory preserved. The last priestess of Tenet, whose name we may never know, understood this profound truth. In safeguarding those humble clay tablets, she ensured that the voice of Carthage would not be lost to the ages. They speak of love and loss, of marriages and funerals, of festivals honoring Tanit and Bolhamon, the chief deities of the Carthaginian pantheon. But the silent witnesses, those clay tablets, hidden in wells and buried beneath the rubula, fused to let Carthage's voice be silenced forever. As a gentle breeze blows, the sand shifts, revealing a single word in Punic script. Remember, but as a diverse and dynamic society with its own internal conflicts and contradictions, there were political factions vying for power, religious reforms that sparked heated debate, and social changes that transformed the fabric of Punic society over the centuries, not as the monsters of Roman propaganda, nor as idealized legends. Each excavation, each deciphered inscription, adds another brushstroke to the portrait of a complex and vibrant society that flourished on the shores of North Africa for nearly 1,000 years. But as human beings, with hopes, fears, and dreams not so different from our own, they burned the great library of Carthage, ... But ideas have no flames to extinguish them. And gold, where a humble potter named Oderbal created a perfect miniature of the great harbor, now lost beneath the waves. Year 480 BCE, the people rejoice as Hamilcar defeats the Greeks at a history not of grand conquests, but of a civilization's heartbeat, precisely what Rome wished to silence forever. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Our ancestors called it Melkart's spear, and those 7 Tanit's necklace, not the gold or jewels that adorned the sacred halls, but the clay tablets that held the very essence of Carthaginian life. To her, these fragile records of births, deaths, and marriages were more precious than all the armies of Rome. The camera follows its descent into the dark waters, where it settles among thousands of others deliberately hidden over generations for this very moment. As the Romans breached the temple walls, they found no glittering treasure trove. In 1982, archaeologists drained that ancient well. The tablets had survived, their Phoenician script still legible after millennia, Let's pause here for a moment. An elderly Tunisian woman points to the stars, teaching her grandson the names passed down through generations. See that bright one? The whispers of the past. What does it truly mean to destroy a people? The Romans wrote the histories, painting Carthage as a land of barbaric rituals and child sacrifice. The story of Carthage is more than just a tale of conquest and destruction. As we walk through the ruins of ancient Carthage today, we tread upon layers of history that are only now beginning to reveal their secrets. The Carthaginians were master sailors and traders, their ships plying the waters of the Mediterranean and beyond. In the markets of Carthage, one could hear a babel of languages: Punic, Greek, Etruscan, and countless others. Yet for all its grandeur, Carthage was also a city of ordinary people living ordinary lives. As we delve deeper into the archaeological record, we begin to see Carthage not as the monolithic enemy of Rome. The fall of Carthage in 146 BCE was a cataclysmic event, one that reverberated throughout the ancient world. As night falls over the ruins of Carthage and the stars begin to twinkle in the velvet sky, we are reminded that history is not a simple tale of victors and vanquished. And so, as we stand beneath the same stars that watched over the rise and fall of empires, let us pause here for a moment. ... The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, guardians of memories, both ancient and new. A lone Carthaginian war elephant trumpets in the distance, its silhouette stark against the blood-red sky. For 3 days, the fields of Cannae ran red. But Hannibal's victory was not won easily. As the Roman legions marched into his trap, they found not a scattered barbarian horde, but an army of unparalleled discipline and cunning. Legionaries who had marched proudly under the eagle now huddled in terror as Hannibal, as African veterans closed in from all sides. A grizzled veteran carefully removes a gold ring from a Roman senator's finger, his eyes haunted by the day's carnage. In the distance, pyres begin to smolder as the victors burn their own dead. Hannibal, moved by the scale of the slaughter, allowed his men a day's rest before pressing on. Let us rest here for a moment, beneath the indifferent stars, as the embers of Cannae slowly fade. In Rome, a stunned silence gave way to frantic preparations. Slaves were freed and armed. Boys barely old enough to shave were pressed into service. The very stones of the city seemed to tremble with fear and resolve, for they knew that Hannibal was coming, and with him the spectre of destruction that had haunted Roman nightmares since the days of Brennus and his Gauls. But history forgets the names of those who showed mercy. It remembers only the cold calculation of his strategy, the devastating efficiency of his troops. The mercenaries who formed the backbone of his force clamored for rest, for plunder, for a return to their homes. And always there was the nagging doubt, could he truly bring Rome to its knees? Or would the city's legendary resilience prove too much, even for his genius? Yet even as the last Roman standards were gathered and the spoils divided, a chill wind blew from the north. Instead, he turned south, seeking allies among the Italian cities that had long resented Roman dominance. Behind him, His weary army stretches into the distance, a snake of bronze and leather winding through olive groves and vineyards. It was a decision that would shape the course of the war, and with it, the fate of two great civilizations. The Republic had survived its darkest hour, and now it thirsted for revenge. Young men who had cowered in fear at Hannibal's name now spoke boldly of carrying the war to Africa itself. And at the head of this new generation stood Scipio, his eyes burning with the fire of destiny. Veterans who had fought 100 battles felt their hands tremble. Raw recruits whispered prayers to gods, both foreign and familiar. And in the center of it all stood Hannibal and Scipio, each man carrying the weight of empires on their shoulders. And though Carthage would eventually fall, razed to the ground, and its earth sown with salt, the memory of its greatest son would live on. Here we rest once more, as the echoes of Zama fade into legend. Cities changed hands, alliances shifted like sand in the wind, and a generation came of age knowing nothing but war. His face is youthful but scarred, his voice ringing with confidence. Behind him, ships laden with legionaries and supplies stretched to the horizon. In Rome, young Scipio dreamed of vengeance and glory. Hannibal, recalled to defend his homeland, would face Scipio on the plains of Zama. Two of history's greatest generals, two civilizations locked in a struggle for supremacy. In the foreground, Hannibal and Scipio lock eyes across the no-man's land, each man's face a study in determination and respect. The fate of the ancient world hung in the balance. Tactics and counter-tactics, feints and charges, moments of individual heroism lost in the greater sweep of history. When the dust settled and the last sword fell silent, it was Rome that stood victorious. Carthage, the ancient power that had challenged Rome's rise, was finally brought to heel. In Carthage, voices grew louder, calling for an end to the conflict. The treasury was depleted, trade disrupted, and the once mighty fleet lay rotting in harbor. Even Hannibal's staunchest supporters began to whisper that perhaps it was time to sue for peace. In their eyes, the fear of Hannibal has been replaced by a cold, implacable resolve. In Carthage, merchants and politicians schemed to end a conflict that threatened to bankrupt their empire. Fabius Maximus, derided as a coward, now found his cautious approach embraced. He fought on, year after year, victory after victory, but each triumph brought him no closer to his ultimate goal. Rome bent, but did not break. Its legions learned, adapted, grew stronger with each defeat, and slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn. The Romans would not meet Hannibal in open battle again. Instead, they would harass, delay, and slowly bleed his army dry. It was a strategy born of desperation, but tempered by a grim determination that would come to define the Roman character. A young tribune stands before them, his voice cracking as he reads the casualty lists. In the background, the sound of hammers echoes as the city's defenses are hastily reinforced. The city's merchants and nobles, who had long chafed under Hannibal's costly war, now saw the possibility of total triumph. But with it came the terrifying prospect of Roman vengeance. The streets rang with celebration, but in quiet corners, wise men whispered of the need for caution, for diplomacy, for an end to the conflict before it consumed them all. Consuls who had boasted of Rome's invincibility lay trampled in the mud, their purple cloaks indistinguishable from the blood-soaked earth. Even the camp followers fought not for glory, but for the desperate chance to see another dawn. In a shadowy alcove, a group of elders confers urgently, their expressions grave as they pore over maps and dispatches. A Gallic mercenary named Brennus was said to have slain 7 Romans with nothing but a broken spear shaft before succumbing to his wounds. In the background, carrion birds circle, their cries mixing with the moans of the dying. The Numidian cavalry harried the flanks like desert winds. Iberian swordsmen held the center with the stubbornness of mountain stone. And at the heart of it all stood Hannibal, orchestrating a symphony of destruction that would echo through the ages. The Romans expected a swift victory. Instead, they found annihilation. When the killing finally ceased, the victors found neither triumph nor satisfaction, just an eerie silence broken only by the cries of the wounded. The battle had reshaped the world, but its true consequences were yet to unfold. Yet Rome did not break. From the ashes of defeat, a new strategy emerged. In Carthage, news of the victory was met with jubilation, tinged with unease. Hannibal himself stood at a crossroads. The road to Rome lay open, but his army was exhausted, his supplies dwindling. As autumn turned to winter, the great general made his choice. He would not march on Rome, not yet. The years that followed were a crucible that forged both Rome and Carthage anew. And always there was Hannibal, the brilliant tactician, the implacable foe, the bogeyman who haunted Roman nightmares. As the war dragged on, both sides began to feel the strain. In Rome, the mood was different. The initial panic had given way to a steely determination. The final act of the great drama was about to begin. As the armies faced each other that fateful morning, the air was thick with tension. What followed was a battle that would be studied for millennia to come. But even in defeat, Hannibal's legend grew. His strategic genius, his unwavering resolve in the face of impossible odds, would inspire generals and conquerors for generations to come. In a dimly lit chamber beneath the streets of ancient Alexandria, 30 BCE, a Greek scholar carefully unrolls a papyrus, revealing intricate hieroglyphs. His eyes widen as he realizes it's a lost treatise on astronomy. A Roman soldier's footsteps echo from above. The scholar hastily re-rolls the scroll and slips it into a hidden compartment, but its knowledge refused to be silenced. They banned certain hieroglyphs, but couldn't stop scribes from encoding messages within seemingly innocuous texts. The city whispers, the lapping of waves against the harbor wall fills the air, and we gaze out at the lighthouse that still guides ships home. While marble temples crumbled and new gods were proclaimed, the essence of Egyptian thought found refuge in unexpected places. A student's clay tablet falls, revealing scratchings of the rhined mathematical papyrus beneath her current work. Craftsmen incorporated sacred ratios into their work, ensuring that even the most mundane objects resonated with cosmic harmony. Midwives passed down herbal remedies that had once been the domain of temple healers, their efficacy proven over thousands of years. Its occupants, a diverse group of scholars, carefully pass a locked chest between them. The chest bears the seal of the Royal Library, but of the living knowledge carried in the minds and hearts of its people. When the great library burned, it was these hidden networks that ensured its most precious contents survived. Copies were spirited away to desert monasteries, secret schools, and the private collections of those who understood the true value of what they protected. Neoplatonist philosophers incorporated concepts from the Hermetic texts into their teachings, preserving ancient wisdom under the guise of Greek rationalism. Arab scholars arriving in the 7th century CE found a city still rich in knowledge. Despite centuries of upheaval, they encountered Coptic monks who could recite astronomical calculations from memory, and Jewish mystics whose understanding of sacred geometry rivaled that of the ancient temple builders. It was a living testament to the resilience of human curiosity and the power of ideas to transcend the rise and fall of empires. Archaeologists uncover fragments of texts that bridge gaps in our understanding of ancient science. As they adjust their equipment, an older local fisherman watches from the shore, a knowing smile on his weathered face. Linguists trace the evolution of concepts through layers of Greek, Coptic, and Arabic terminology. And in the narrow streets of the old city, there are still those who whisper that some secrets have never left the shadow of the lighthouse. Alchemists passed down formulas that traced their origins to the priests of Thoth, disguising sacred knowledge as mere chemistry. The intricate device incorporates both Greek measurements and Egyptian symbolism, a perfect fusion of traditions. The libraries of Baghdad, the academies of and the scriptoria of medieval Europe all drew from this hidden wealth. The scent of history lingers in the air, inviting us to look beyond the surface and seek the hidden currents that still shape our world. It adapts, it hides, it finds new vessels, but it endures. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest lesson this ancient city has to teach us. That wisdom, once kindled, is a flame that can never truly be extinguished. Sufi mystics meditated in abandoned catacombs, their chants echoing the hymns once sung to Osiris. Alchemists conducted their experiments in workshops that had once housed temple laboratories, the walls still bearing faded hieroglyphs beneath layers of plaster. Ideas that had germinated in the shadow of the pharaohs found new expression in the works of Islamic polymaths and Christian scholastics alike. Greek astronomers studied alongside Egyptian priests, each enriching the other's understanding of the cosmos. Persian mystics found common ground with devotees of Isis, recognizing shared truths beneath different symbols. In 2021, he unfurls a tattered papyrus, revealing a diagram of the human body with acupuncture points labeled in both Chinese characters and Egyptian hieroglyphs. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of tunnels beneath the modern streets, leading to a chamber filled with papyri untouched since the 3rd century CE. The texts contained mathematical theorems that wouldn't be discovered in Europe for another 1,000 years. Some threads of knowledge are too resilient to be cut. They outlawed ancient rituals, but couldn't erase the way fishermen still poured libations before setting out on the Nile, just as their ancestors had done for millennia. And when Rome's grip finally loosened, the first words carved into the newly uncovered temple walls were neither Latin nor Greek, but a form of Coptic that echoed with the cadence of the pharaohs. For centuries, the true wisdom of Egypt lived on in secretin hidden chambers, where Greek philosophers debated ancient Egyptian concepts. In the workshops where artisans incorporated sacred symbols into seemingly mundane objects, even in the marketplaces where merchants whispered fragments of long-forbidden texts as they haggled over spices. Alexandria's famed library may have burned. The conquerors never truly grasped the depth of what they sought to control. Even now, let us rest here for a moment. Alexandria's hidden heart beats strongest in the realm of ideas. The city's true power lay not in its visible monuments, but in the invisible networks of knowledge that threaded through its alleys and courtyards. This hidden Alexandria was a place of synthesis, where the wisdom of Egypt merged with the intellectual currents of the Mediterranean world. As the beacon ignites, the city's resilience in the face of conquests and calamity was not just a matter of stone and mortar. Alexandria's hidden heart continued to beat long after its golden age had passed. An Arab astronomer and a Coptic craftsman collaborate on an astrolabe. This underground current of wisdom flowed outward from Alexandria, nourishing intellectual oases across the medieval world. Yet even as Alexandria's influence spread far and wide, the city itself remained a place of secrets and hidden knowledge. The true miracle of Alexandria was not its famous lighthouse or its vanished library, but the way it preserved and transmitted knowledge across centuries and cultures. Even in the modern era, echoes of this hidden Alexandria continue to resonate. A team of marine archaeologists uses advanced sonar to map the harbor floor. Alexandria's hidden heartbeat, on a reminder that true knowledge can never be fully conquered or erased. Take Senator Magao, the Roman, for instance. He commissioned grand temples to Jupiter. These Carthaginian ghosts, these phantom kings without a kingdom, waged a war of culture and influence. They knew that to preserve Carthage, they had to become its most cunning export. Infrared imaging reveals the original sketch beneath a near-perfect tannet, her arms outstretched. The artist's signature, Margot Carthaginius. Within a mere 100 years of Carthage's fall, senators of Punic descent governed Roman provinces with a deft touch their pure Roman counterparts often lacked. The ships that carried Rome's vast merchant fleets, their sleek designs, owed far more to Carthaginian shipwrights than to anything birthed on Italian shores. Even that ubiquitous condiment, garum, the fish sauce Romans slathered on practically every dish. In the ruins of Volubilis, a city that straddled the line between Roman and Punic influence, archaeologists have uncovered fascinating remnants of everyday life. The Punic language, though officially suppressed, continued to be spoken in North Africa for centuries after Carthage's fall. Ptolemy of Mauritania, a descendant of Carthage's ruling class, played the part of Rome's loyal vassal king to perfection. He attended banquets in Rome, made the right political alliances, and seemed every inch the Romanized ruler. Yet behind this carefully cultivated facade, Ptolemy was quietly rebuilding the ancient Carthaginian trade networks. Echoes of Carthage persisted. The Vandals, those fierce Germanic invaders, established a kingdom centered on Carthage itself. They adopted many Punic customs and even revived some of the old trade routes. When the Byzantine Empire under Justinian reconquered North Africa, they found a population that still clung to elements of its Punic heritage. Nearly 7 centuries after Carthage's destruction, ships bearing his seal began to appear in ports from Hispania to Egypt, following routes that hadn't seen regular traffic since Carthage's heyday. Carthage wasn't just a city. The fire crackled softly. As the flames dance and the night deepens, we might reflect on the enduring power of cultural memory. The story of Carthage and its ghostly afterlife serves as a reminder that true conquest is never as simple as raising cities or redrawing maps. The human spirit, with its stories, its customs, and its stubborn refusal to be erased, finds ways to persist, and we rest beneath the stars, or even an empire. It was an idea of resilience, of adaptation, of finding ways to thrive even in the face of utter defeat. And ideas, as we've seen, have a way of outliving empires. They seep into the very foundations of the societies that try to eradicate them. Emerging in unexpected ways, generations later, it evolved, blending with Latin and local Berber tongues. But its core remained recognizably Punic. Roman authors, like Apuleius, born in what is now Algeria, peppered their Latin works with Punic turns of phrase. In the centuries that followed, North Africa would produce some of Rome's greatest in some small way. The salt sizzles and the olive pit cracks in the heat. In this moment of quiet contemplation, we honor not just the ghosts of Carthage, but all those who have found ways to keep their culture alive in the face of overwhelming odds. Their legacy reminds us that true strength often lies not in conquest, but in the ability to adapt, to persist, and to quietly shape the future long after the battles have been lost and won. We are all heirs to Carthage too, its determination, its ingenuity, and its ability to rise from the ashes in new and unexpected forms. As we gaze up at the same stars that shone over ancient Carthage, we might wonder what other forgotten voices whisper to us from the past, what hidden influences shape our world today, unacknowledged and unseen. Septimius Severus, born in Leptis Magna, spoke Latin with a heavy Punic accent. Even as he ruled the empire, his son Caracalla extended Roman citizenship to all free inhabitants of the empire, a move that would have been unthinkable in the days when Punic was synonymous with enemy. Even St. Augustine, that pillar of Latin Christianity, admitted to a childhood familiarity with Punic, hidden in wall cavities. They found love spells written in a curious mix of Latin and Punic script. One particularly poignant example reads, "As Tanit bound the moon to the sky, bind his heart to mine." There, in a twisted echo of Carthaginian legend, Ptolemy was strangled with a golden chain. The same manner in which Queen Dido was said to have ended her life centuries earlier. It was a poetic end, but ultimately futile. By then, the idea of Carthage had long since outgrown any single individual. The modern Moroccan archaeologist, assisting with the Degui and Help But Blush, grandmother still whispers those very words when brewing love potions. A Carthaginian recipe, through and through, Scipio Aemilianus, may have reduced a city to ash, but the essence of Carthage's ingenuity, its adaptability, proved far too elusive for the flames. Rome may have salted the earth of their homeland, but ideas, they whispered in marketplaces, sang lullabies to children who would grow up thinking themselves thoroughly Roman, and left their mark in 1,000 subtle ways. One reads, "As Tanit bound the moon to the sky, bind his heart to mine. The curator's Moroccan assistant blushes her grandmother, still uses the same incantation. In the port of Ostia, sharp-eyed observers might notice peculiar knots used by the dockworkers, knots that would have been familiar to any Carthaginian sailor. The finest perfumes in Rome often came from workshops run by families who could trace their lineage back to Carthaginian perfumers. Even in the realm of medicine, Punic influence persisted. The famed physician Celsus, though drew heavily on Carthaginian medical texts that had somehow survived the city's destruction. Ideas have a way of taking root in the most unlikely of places. But if you looked closely, you'd see unmistakable Punic architectural flourishes hidden in plain sight. Or consider Odherbal the Faithful, a merchant of considerable means. He kept Roman legions well supplied, while secretly funneling coin to anti-Roman insurgents in his. But perhaps most audacious of all were the machinations within Rome's very heart. At least 3 Italian families of noble standing, their lineages stretching back generations, still whispered prayers to Balhamon before every crucial Senate vote. The cleverest Carthaginians never raised arms against Rome. They embraced it at least. That's what they wanted Rome to believe. This wasn't mere nostalgia or stubborn tradition. It was resistance of the subtlest kind. Consider the curious case of Bomilcar the artist. To all appearances, he was an unremarkable painter of modest talent, churning out frescoes of Venus for wealthy Roman patrons. Yet modern analysis tells a different tale. Beneath the layers of paint, infrared imaging reveals the truth. Each Venus began life as a near-perfect rendering of Tanit, arms outstretched in benediction. Bomilcar signed his work proudly. Mago Carthaginus, a small act of defiance, hidden for centuries. This was Carthage's true vengeance, a cultural infiltration so thorough, so patient, that Rome scarcely noticed as it was transformed from within. The ghosts of Carthage haunted more than just the corridors of power. Perhaps nowhere was this cultural persistence more evident than in matters of the heart. This resilience of Carthaginian culture extended far beyond mere sentiment. The last of the true ghost kings, those with direct ties to Carthage's royal lineage, met their end in a fittingly dramatic fashion. This resurgence didn't go unnoticed. The unstable Emperor Caligula, perhaps sensing a threat to Roman commercial dominance, had Ptolemy summoned to Rome in 40 CE. The death of Ptolemy marked the end of an era, but not the end of Carthage's lingering influence. Even as the Western Roman Empire crumbled, in the end, let's pause here for a moment. In this quiet moment, perhaps, the fire burns low. In a quiet park, an elderly storyteller extinguishes a small fire, the embers glowing like memories in the twilight, but the echoes of history never truly fade. Look around you, and you'll see that the past lives on in the most unexpected places. It breathes in the street vendor's call, unchanged for centuries. It whispers in the lullabies grandmothers sing to their grandchildren, melodies that have soothed generations. It even chuckles in the heated debates of scholars who after millennia still argue about long-forgotten kings and forgotten empires. And so, dear listener, our tale draws to a close. The camera pans to show tour guides speaking in a dozen languages, their words carrying the same excitement that once filled these streets during grand festivals. child of this ever-changing world, nothing of value is ever truly lost. You are not just yourself, but the sum of all who came before you. Every step you take echoes with the footsteps of ancestors. Every word you speak carries the weight of countless conversations held in marketplaces, palaces, and the laughter of children playing in the streets, a symphony of past and present, a promise of futures yet to come. And humble homes throughout the ages, it simply changes form, like water flowing from river to sea to cloud and back again. The empires of old may have crumbled, but their legacy lives on in you, in the way you think, in the words you speak, in the very blood that flows through your veins. And if you dream, may it be of a place where every cobblestone holds a story. Generations from now, some small part of you will live on too, and add your own verse to this never-ending story. For while empires may crumble and cities may fall, the human spirit, that fire that burns within us, all can never truly be extinguished. It is passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation, an unbroken chain stretching back to the dawn of time and forward into a future we can only imagine, in a turn of phrase your great-grandchild uses without knowing its origin, in a family tradition whose meaning has been lost to time, but whose importance is still felt in the very stones of the cities we build, each one a testament to human perseverance and ingenuity, where the wind carries whispers of forgotten languages, lights twinkle like stars, and for a moment the modern skyline seems to flicker, revealing the ghostly outlines of ancient citadels and temples before returning to the present, and where the fire of human spirit, though sometimes reduced to embers, never stops burning. You see, nations may rise and fall, borders may shift like sand, but true immortality, that lies in the things too ordinary, too deeply woven into the fabric of daily life, to ever truly vanish. It's the recipes passed down through generations, each spice a testament to ancient trade routes. As he walks away, his silhouette seems to shift, now a merchant, now a warrior. Now, a poet before, settling back into the form of an ordinary man. It's the proverbs that still ring true, wisdom distilled from countless lifetimes of experience. Remember this: you are part of something greater than yourself. You are a living, breathing piece of history, carrying within you the hopes, dreams, and wisdom of all who came before. Honor their memory by living fully, by loving deeply, and by leaving the world a little better than you found it. It's the way a craftsman's hands move, muscle memory inherited from artisans, long turned to dust. It's in the way a farmer still plants his crops, according to the same celestial calendar his ancestors used. It's in the intricate henna designs a bride wears on her wedding day, patterns that have adorned hands for thousands of years. It's in the DNA that shows how bloodlines have intertwined, creating a tapestry of humanity more complex than any empire's family tree. Empires measure their greatness in conquests and monuments, but what endures? So, sleep now, for, in truth, remember this as you go forth into the world, and perhaps so go now, and if ever you feel lost or alone, final sound, a muezzin's call to prayer blends with the distant honking of car horns.